Even though we're calling these personality characteristics, it doesn't mean these are permanent. These are not ingrained in you, something you can't fix. What I tell people all the time to get out of the habit of saying is things like, oh, that's just me. This is just me. A classic me, right? Oh, I'm just an anxious person. Or, oh, I'm always putting pressure on myself. I always have to have things perfect, or I always have to do things this way. No, we're getting out of that extreme thinking and those words because that is not true. That's only who you are. These characteristics are not who you are. They are learned patterns. And personality characteristics can be learned, which means you can unlearn them and work with them. Hey there, and welcome to the Heal with Grace podcast. I'm your host, Grace Secker, and I'm a holistic licensed therapist and nervous system coach who believes that the chronic and often unseen symptoms you're living with are a sign of something deeper going on, a sign that your nervous system needs attention. In each episode, I'll share the science behind the most common chronic health disorders, plus holistic tips using mental, physical, and spiritual practices. You'll hear what I've learned in my journey and the true stories from our trusted guests so you can feel less alone in your experience and give yourself grace no matter what you're going through. So without further ado, settle in and get cozy. It's time to heal with grace. Hey, and welcome back to the Heal with Grace podcast. How's everyone doing? It is, well, when this comes out, we're in spring, we're moving forward. There's a little more energy in the air. There's sun coming out. I know for me, I'm starting to feel, well, I've talked about this a little bit, but I have been feeling this like forward momentum this year. It's kind of like if you're in this world, if you're in kind of the energy world, it's the year of the fire horse, and there's a lot of energy behind that. There's forward motion and movement, and that looks different for everyone. That's not just like physical energy that you feel in your body, but it can also be creativity and emotional and thinking of things differently and being embodied in a different way. Feel that shift, at least especially moving through me. There's a lot opening and moving, which is pretty cool, to be honest. I feel like there was a place stuck for a long time that I'm moving through, and I've heard a lot of people in this space too. So if you're not, that's okay. If you not even recognize it or you don't even understand what I'm saying, that's okay too. But it's almost just more of an invitation to help you get a little bit more in touch with what are the seasons of you? What are the seasons of your life? We all have seasons, we all have time periods, we all have phases that we go through. Maybe that's your health that you're going through phases, maybe that's relationally, work-wise. Maybe you literally are moving from one place to another geographically. Like there's all different phases that we go through in life. And I think that's really important to recognize on a higher level because especially for all of my listeners that tend to like to think in certain boxes and, this is one way and this is how we do things and this is how it's going to be. This right or wrong thinking, which we're actually going to talk about a little bit today. Um, that's just a learned pattern and that's not life. Life is never constant. Life is never the same. The only constant is change, right? The only known factor is that we live and we die and in this reality of our human body in this lifetime. And so I've now gone down a whole other rabbit hole. My point being is that if we can open up to the flexibility and neutrality of moving through life in different ways and different phases, it brings more of a curiosity lens to what you're going through. It brings a little more acceptance to what you're going through because what you're going through right now is not going to be the same thing next year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. It won't be. There might be some similarities or patterns that are still there, but your life won't look the exact same. And we forget that when we're in the middle of shit, right? And we feel like crap and we've been dealing with things for what feels like forever, for a long time. You forget that you can actually get out of that and that it's only temporary. So this is your invitation to take that on, that knowing that where you are right now is temporary. It will not last forever. Your flare will not last forever, even if your brain thinks that, right? Your brain goes into survival mode and is like, oh my gosh, what do we do now? We got to get out of this. It won't last forever. So here's a reminder that most things in life are temporary. Okay, now let's jump into actually what we are here to talk about today. So, I have actually an episode a couple years ago on this, but this topic is so important because it helps you understand yourself a little bit more and it helps you. I've heard that this can really help you and it helped myself identify the patterns that can contribute to our stress nervous system, can contribute to neuroplastic symptoms, which can be really helpful, right? When we can name something, identify it, it helps us feel a little more comfortable with it. So, we are going through the 6 different personality traits that lead into or can contribute to someone with neuroplastic symptoms. So, pain reprocessing therapy has identified this as well, and they call these the personality traits of someone with a sensitive nervous system. Now, I added a little nuance here to a couple of them today from what I've seen in my work and what I see with most people that I help and treat and to be honest, myself included, because it's helpful, again, to name something, identify it, see it as something outside of you, right? Even though we're calling these personality characteristics, it doesn't mean these are permanent. These are not ingrained in you, something you can't fix. What I tell people all the time to get out of the habit of saying is things like, oh, that's just me. This is just me. Classic me, right? Oh, I'm just an anxious person. Or, oh, I'm always putting pressure on myself. I always have to have things perfect or I always have to do things this way. No, we're getting out of that extreme thinking and those words because that is not true. That's only who you are. These characteristics are not who you are, they are learned patterns. And personality characteristics can be learned, which means you can unlearn them and work with them. So, first and foremost, anxiousness. We very much so know that a nervous system that is chronically oriented toward threat in a stressed place, not necessarily clinical anxiety, but just a baseline of that of if something is wrong, what do I need to do? What do I need to watch for? The hypervigilance dressed up as preparedness, right? That scanning, monitoring, always looking for what's wrong, planning for worst case scenarios, difficult being fully present because some part of you is always on watch, right? Maybe you actually feel that activation and anxiety in your body constantly. Maybe it's hard to sleep. Maybe you're always worrying about something in your head and you're constantly overthinking everything. Did I say the wrong thing? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I said that thing to that person. Oh my gosh, I feel this twinge in my stomach. Am I dying? All of these examples are anxiety. And the body that's stuck in a stressed nervous system can impact that anxiety and vice versa, right? The more that we learn that we have to worry about something or have it be a certain way, then the more our nervous system is on guard and in threat mode. So I want you to really think about how much of your mental energy on any given day is spent watching for what might go wrong or what is wrong or overthinking something constantly of how you need to do it or don't do it. And you might be saying sitting here like, "Yeah, I do that. Okay, cool. Now what do I do with it? How do I get out of it?" Though that is other podcast episodes for sure, but I will obviously address that for a little bit here. The underlying underneath anxiety is fear. Fear of something. Fear of not doing something. Fear of doing something incorrectly. Fear of not having it go a certain way. And then underneath that layer is fear that you won't be accepted. And that might sound a little extreme, but it is your unconscious. It is that inner child. I'm afraid if I don't do something this way or I don't get it right, then I won't be accepted. And if you're not accepted from a survival standpoint, you're not part of the herd, you die. So this is a prime anxiety can be primal, right? We have anxiety because we feel like we can't fit in a certain way that we need to quote unquote be. The opposite of anxiety is flexibility, is acceptance, acceptance that you don't have to be somewhere that you're not, meaning you feel like you need to do something a certain way, but you recognize, oh, actually, maybe like what happens if I don't do that? Nothing happens. I don't die. The other person doesn't die. And again, I understand that sounds extreme, but that's what's happening underneath the surface. Or anxiety that you won't be somewhere in a certain time. Oh my gosh, I was totally called out by an old coach in a great way. I say that in a positive way, where I showed up to our session online. I was like 1 or 2 minutes late or something, and I think I had texted her beforehand, like, "I'm so sorry I'm running late." And I show up and I'm kind of frazzled, and she was like, "It's really hard for you to be late, isn't it?" And it just struck me, and I was like, well, yeah, because you shouldn't be late. It's rude. Now, yeah, I mean, I do think that, respecting time is important in life, but it shouldn't cause the level of anxiety and worry that it did in me. And really what was there was like, if I don't show up on time, I'm going to be judged, right? I'm going to be criticized and then take offense to when someone else is late. I can't believe they're showing up late. It's so disrespectful. Now, to be honest, there is a level of that, right? Like, respect everyone's time, respect what you say you're going to do, honor your word, like, obviously. But there should be flexibility in that, and it shouldn't cause so much anxiety. So start to look at, okay, what are the patterns? Where does anxiety show up the most for you? And where do you think that's coming from? All right, number two is pressure. Chronic internal pressure. I already kind of noted that a little bit within anxiety, but pressure is to be more, to be better, to perform better, the pressure we put on ourselves to be a certain way. You can't rest without feeling guilty. You always think about the next thing. Your nervous system is always running on a low hum of urgency, even when nothing is actually wrong. Like the pressure to get everything done in a certain way, get it all done, the pressure to complete your to do list, which, by the way, to do lists never empty, they just continue. And rest that doesn't feel restful is usually where you live, right? That quiet feeling that you're always slightly behind a little bit. Maybe your nervous system reads internal pressure the same way it reads external threat. Like there's no difference between I have to get this done and I'm in danger at the level of the nervous system. Chronic internal pressure equals chronic activation, which equals symptoms. Pressure comes in the form of self criticism. I can't believe I did this. I can't believe I did that. Why can't I get this better? Why am I not healed? Why am I not recovered by now? That internal pressure to be a certain way, to do things a certain way. We learned that early on from society, family, right? You had to do something certain way. I've said that many times, but you get what I'm saying. Maybe you weren't really allowed to express yourself, or you were being criticized for being the one that was too loud. And so you learned, well, I can't be too loud. I have to be this way. And then when you are loud, the voice in your head goes, right? So the question I want you to sit with here is, when was the last time you were able to mess up or you made a mistake and it was okay? That you didn't judge or criticize yourself for. That you said, oops, dang it, you know, and then you moved on, or you cleaned it up, or you apologized, or whatever you need to do, and you moved on and you didn't think about it again. If you're sitting here like, I don't know how to do that, I always braid myself for making mistakes, then you need to look at how much pressure you're putting on yourself. It's only hurting you. It's not hurting anyone else. Number three is perfectionism. Okay, what I want to identify here as perfectionism, some people recognize that they are perfectionist. The need to do something incredibly right, always avoid mistakes, and meet an internal standard that somehow keeps moving, right? You have to dot the I's, dot the I's, cross the T's. It takes you forever to write an email. You procrastinate on something because you're afraid it won't go perfectly and you can't fail, right? You're someone that is highly meticulous and detail oriented. Now, I also want to call out people that still actually might be perfectionists, but they don't fully identify that with that, which is actually kind of me. The one you might show up as just needing things to be done a certain way. Maybe that doesn't mean it's completely perfect, which, by the way, nothing's ever perfect, right? Maybe it's that you do have difficulty when routines are disrupted, or you replay conversations, you overthink decisions. There's rigidity around behavior, around food, around symptoms. That's perfectionism in disguise. It doesn't really matter what we call it, but it's the need for things to be a certain way, right? That a little bit more rigidity and less flexibility. And that might feel like constant monitoring and self evaluation, right? So that need for your day to go a certain way. And if something messes up there or something gets canceled, it kind of throws you off more than maybe it needs to. So there's a lot of different nuance within perfectionism, right? I've told the story before on here about when I identified with it, which still I was still like, I'm not the typical perfectionist. But I do have these tendencies of needing things to be a certain way because that's what I learned. That is very much so what I learned from familial patterning and also just society being a girl who grew up in where I grew up, what I was taught, the environment I was in. You got to do some things a certain way to be accepted, to be liked, to be the good girl. So, okay, back to the story. So, I was sitting in my therapist's office. I was like early 20s. I was in like beginning of grad school, I think. And I can't remember exactly what I was talking about, but I think I said, she was asking me about my history, about school, because I was in school. And I was like, school's always been hard for me. I have learning disabilities, learning disorders. And so I learned that and I did get some help with it, but it always was really hard. And then I said something like, I could never like make the straight A's. I was never good enough. I was always like right below the bar. I always made like an 89 average or something. I couldn't ever get it right. I could never get it perfect to get A's consistently. And I went on about something like that. Like I can never get it just right. And she looked at and oh, no, this is what it was. She said, "It sounds like you have some perfectionistic tendencies." And that's when I responded with, "No, because I can never actually get it right. I can never get I always just get an 89. I can't get more than that." And then she looked at me with these like, yeah, exactly eyes. And it was one of those light bulb moments. I was like, oh shit. That is perfectionism. You never think you can get it right. So you keep striving for more, right? There's no limit. So I hope that you can look at that because this is a very common trait with people with chronic symptoms. We put pressure on ourselves, anxiety, need things to be a certain way, rigidity. That all creates this rigidity in the nervous system that comes from threat mode, which creates dysregulation. Number 4 is people pleasing. So, chronically prioritizing others' people's comforts and needs and reactions over your own. You end up suppressing your own wants, your own emotions, and boundaries in order to be liked, to keep the peace, avoid conflict, avoid feelings, or to feel safe. And this happens in so many little subtle ways that you don't realize. Some people fully identify, like, yeah, I'm a people pleaser, but other people don't realize how this actually shows up. And some of it might just look like you say often, oh, I don't want to make it a big deal. I'm fine. No, it's all right. I don't want to bother you about this. Or I just need to push through. Or I don't care what we do. You choose. Right. Or maybe you're someone, man, I said this before where I was like, so I think I was hearing someone, again, I think this was like early 20s. I heard someone say, she's talking about a conflict or fight she had with a friend. And in my mind, I was like, I don't have fights with friends. I guess I have good relationships or something like that. I was like, I just don't have conflict. I don't know. It's just not a part of my life. Y'all, that's because I'm conflict avoidant and I'm a people pleaser and I avoid it at all costs. Like, I play the nice girl so I don't ruffle any feathers and so we don't get in fights. But then what's happening underneath the surface is that I'm suppressing my needs and my wants and my desires. And then that comes out and boils over into stress nervous system. So for you, it could look like actually the suppressed emotions that you never express. They don't just disappear, they do go somewhere. They go living in the psyche and the nervous system. And your nervous system holds on what the mind won't express. And that holding has a very real physical cost, right? So, people pleasing is one of the most direct pathways from emotional suppression to chronic physical symptoms. I actually just created a post on Instagram with the title, like, no, it's a complete sentence. And the whole point of the post was to say, I mean, truly, if you can just say no and let it be no, fantastic. But if you have to explain yourself or justify your no, you're people pleasing. You're taking responsibility for someone else's reaction that they might have for the no. You're not responsible for that. And furthermore, when you start to say no, you actually open up a yes in your life to something that might be even better or to work through an emotion that you need to work through. So start to look at, what are you putting above your own needs or desires? Are you scanning the room and always taking the pulse of how everyone's feeling and how everyone's doing and trying to manage that? That's a little bit more people pleasing oriented. All right, number 5 is catastrophizing. So this one's a big one, especially if you're in early days of chronic symptoms and you have gone down the rabbit hole of doctors and tests and all the things, and all you want to do is figure out what's wrong, right? Catastrophizing is the tendency to move quickly toward the worst case scenario. So you're constantly worrying over and over and over. You're having looping where over and over and over in your brain of what's wrong. Oh my gosh, why is it happening? Could I be dying? Is it a tumor? What's happening? Blah, blah, blah. Like you can't get out of the worst case scenario loop in your brain. That's catastrophizing. So I really want you to name that. When you can name what's happening, when you're looping in the what's wrong, how could this be worse? What if it does this? What if? Right? That's a really important thing to name so that you can recognize and step outside of it. If a bad day becomes evidence that you'll never get better, or a flare becomes proof that this isn't working and you constantly just go down the doom spiral, that's catastrophizing. You might Google your symptoms at midnight. You might read the worst case stories in chronic illness forums or whatever forum you're a part of, whatever Reddit forum, right? If you're interpreting every physical sensation as a signal that something is wrong, it might feel like fear is amplifying, like your chest is pounding a little bit more. Every time the brain predicts danger, the nervous system responds, creating more symptoms, creating more fear, which creates more symptoms. Really watch the story that you're running, right? I heard someone say that it's like a TV channel. Like that catastrophizing is the freaking scary movie TV channel. We need to turn that off or turn it down. Work on turning it down because it's not truth. And the more that it goes down that road, the more it creates fear. So the antidote to that is radically accepting and knowing that your body is actually in a place of stress and you're working on moving through that by listening to these podcasts, seeing a coach. If you're in the mind body healing method, you're working through the program, you're working through the tools and the skills, and you're helping yourself. Doesn't mean you're going to be perfect overnight, but it's really important to acknowledge that that is something that you're doing for yourself and you're stepping outside of the catastrophizing. Last but not least, that goes along with all of this is one that I identify all the time in people. I call it out every day. Black and white thinking, also known as all or nothing thinking. It's the tendency to see things in extremes, right or wrong, all or nothing. It's either working or it isn't. Either I'm getting better or I'm getting worse. There's no middle ground, there's no gray area, no room for the messy, non-linear reality of life or what healing actually looks like. This is sneaky because a lot of people with black and white thinking don't recognize it as a pattern. It just feels like having standards, being clear, knowing what you want. But underneath it, the nervous system is constantly evaluating, sorting, and bracing. And that keeps the activation going. So it might look like you have a good week and then a hard day comes into play and just then you're like, "Oh my gosh, everything's over," or "I'm back to where I was." Nothing's ever going to get better. So you can't fully tolerate that there's an in between, knowing that, hey, flares happen and that's part of it. It's this all or nothing. Either I'm better or I'm worse. And I will be so direct with you here that that is not your body. That's not human nature. That's not what's going to happen. I consider myself recovered, and many other people that I've brought on this podcast consider themselves recovered. That does not mean I don't have things or symptoms that pop up every now and then, because our bodies are not just going to not ever have symptoms again, right? Like physical symptoms, we have a physical body. So it's not all or nothing, but just see where this pops up, right? Like, okay, I'm learning this new routine. I'm learning all these skills and tools. I got to do it every day. And then when I fall off, okay, well, shit, I fell off. I failed, right? Like, and you don't pick it back up. No, you start again and you move forward. It's always about the ebb and flow. And the big part of this work is learning how to be uncomfortable, more uncomfortable in that gray middle area and allow it to be okay. It's okay to be in the messy. It's okay to be in the gray. We don't have to be perfect. We don't need to be right or wrong. It's a big part of this healing process. Okay, save this episode. Come back to it because these things sneak up on us all the time. All these symptoms sneak up so easily. And remember that it's a learning process. You're helping yourself. The more you listen to this and you can identify these patterns, you're like, I'm doing that thing again. Oh, I'm thinking in all or nothing. I'm being hard on myself. The more you do that, the more it steps out. You step outside of that pattern, right? And then you can pause and shift. It's not about fixing yourself or fixing your personality. It's just about understanding why your nervous system has been running so hard for so long and starting to give it a different message. If you heard yourself in these, and I'm guessing if you're listening to this, you did, and you want more support around this to identify it, this is exactly what the small group for the mind body healing method is about, because I dig in there with you and really help you understand and call you out in these patterns so that you can help yourself. You can find the link below, dive into the mind body healing method, and then you can apply to be a part of one of the small groups that I'm starting. It's for people who really want that individual support but want to be doing it with other people who get it. All right. And if you have any questions, DM me, let me know, and I will see you next week. Keep healing with grace.